Hey there, it's Jamie, and we're going to be working on our example from chapter 12, where we use the k-nearest neighbors method of supervised data mining to try to predict who is going to enroll and purchase a gym membership. So to get you started here, we need to make sure that we've loaded in our chapter 12 data set. In particular, we want the sheet called gym data, which I have. And then using the R script file for chapter 12 that is in the course files, you want to run the suppress warnings code. Then you need to make sure that you've got the gains, the PROC, the caret package. Caret can be a little funny to install, so you can run one of these lines, and if it doesn't work, try running the other. And then you'll want to make sure that you've got all of these libraries installed. Obviously, we're using other packages besides what we're downloading today, but you probably have them because we would have used them in other classes, so make sure to add those to your library. You can double check to see if they're in your library by taking a look at packages. You can search here for any package to see if you have it, and if it's in your library, click it to add it to your library or install it if you're missing it. So in our My Data file, I'm going to re-download mine because I was playing with this before starting. Our My Data file contains 1,000 observations of people who have visited and joined or not joined our gym. And we know for each of those people whether or not they joined, 1 meaning yes and 0 meaning no, whether they enrolled. That's obviously our outcome variable or our target variable in this case. And we also have information on their age in years, their income in dollars, and the number of days they work out per week in hours. Because these are all such different scales, we need to standardize them so that rather than having the variables age, income, and hours expressed in years, dollars, and hours, we need them expressed in z-scores. So how many standard deviations away from the mean is each of these people with respect to these variables? So we're going to use the scale function, and we're going to use scale to standardize the variables of age, income, and hours, the ones that are in columns 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to call this new scaled data set My Data. So to do that, we're just going to create My Data 1, which is going to be our new data frame. And it's going to consist of the scaled values of the variables in My Data. We don't want all of them. We don't want to scale enroll because it's 0 and 1. It's our target variable. We want to leave it as it is. So we're going to scale the data first, those 3 columns, 2 through 4. And then after we do that, we're going to add enroll to it. So now if I look at My Data 1, I can see that I've got standardized scores for age, income, and hours. A negative score means that an individual had an age below the mean, whereas a positive score indicates that they have a value above the mean. But that My Data 1 only has those 3 variables, and now we need to go back and add enroll. So what we're going to do there is we're going to alter My Data 1. And we're going to alter it using the data frame function. And we're going to say that this new data frame, well, we're going to rename it My Data 1. It's going to contain everything from My Data 1. But it's also going to contain the variable from My Data that's called enroll. And if that works well, My Data 1 should now have 4 variables, and it does. So now we also can see the standardized scores for someone in addition to whether or not they enrolled. So that's great. One thing to note is that the fourth column, enroll, now has this really long name, and so let's change that. So that rather than calling it my data enroll, let's just have it called enroll. So to do that, we use the call names function. Call names, and we want the column name from my data 1 that is in column 4 to be in single quotations. We'll type it out, ENROLL. Check your case, because whatever case you choose, you're going to have to be consistent with from now on. And now let's take a look at it to make sure that it worked, and it did. Enroll. Excellent. Let's save. And the last thing we need to do before we move forward is change the type of variable of enroll from number to factor. And so a factor is basically R's version of a categorical variable, because it's not as though we can take, someone can be any number between 0 and 1, like you don't partially enroll, at least not in this example. So we've got to change it so that someone couldn't possibly be 0.2. We're going to change it to a factor variable so that it has 2 possible values. And we've got to do it in 2 stages. First, we change it to a character, and then we change it to a factor. If we don't go to character first, we'll end up with factor variables of values of 1 and 2. And we don't want that. So we have to change it. And we're going to do it like this. So we're going to identify the variable that we want to change, which is my data enroll. And then we're going to change it so that it's a character, and that it's the character version of itself. That just allows us to change the type. After we run that piece of code, enroll will be a character with values of 1 to 0. And then now we're going to change it to a factor. Great. Now it says it's a factor with 2 levels, 0 and 1, and it is. So I'm going to stop that recording here, and that gets us through our data cleaning, and then I'm going to move into our next step, which is going to be partitioning the data into training and validation sets. So come on back when you're ready.